In 2013, Edward Snowden, an ex-NSA freelancer, released to journalists massive amounts of documents showing that the NSA had been spying on U.S. citizens and using vulnerabilities in smartphones and data centers. Since then, I've wanted more oversight over our government agencies. I felt so in the dark. Conspiracies, agendas. The government is spying on us. Are we protected or just monitored? Should we panic? How bad is it?
Podcast playlist.
You are listening to Podcast Playlist, a podcast about podcasts, where I, Brendan Hutchins, share what I've been listening to and why you should listen too. This is my second in the series of news and politics podcasts. Last episode, I brought to you 538 Data Analysts, and in this episode, I have selected Intercepted, which looks deeper into surveillance and government and corporate motivations. Even though Intercepted is known as a liberal podcast, they attack the left just as much as the right. From Intercept's About page, The Intercept is dedicated to producing fearless adversarial journalism. We believe journalism should bring transparency and accountability to powerful governmental and corporate institutions, and our journalists have the editorial freedom and legal support to pursue this mission. When Snowden leaked the NSA surveillance documents in 2013 to Glenn Greenwald, a litigation lawyer of 10 years and writer for The Guardian, Glenn co-created The Intercept, a website devoted to exposing government corruption, spying, and surveillance. Since then, The Intercept has continued to release many leaked cables and documents to expose the government's secrets. Starting in January 2017, The Intercept started a weekly hour-long podcast called Intercepted to disseminate and discuss authentic journalism. The host of Intercepted is Jeremy Scahill, known for his book Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. He is the fellow at the Nation Institute, previously a producer and contributor to Democracy Now!, and is a co-founder of The Intercept. He monologues leading into a topic, moderates a panel of writers and editors from The Intercept, and interviews a politician or journalist. Every Intercepted contributor is an award-winning and well-renowned journalist who examines leaked cables, documents, and more to share details with you won't hear or get the full story on in the nightly news, such as the Obama administration's drone procedures and the first comprehensive publication of classified documents about U.S. capture and kill operations. Glenn Greenwald is often a panelist and contributor on the podcast, offering a detailed and comprehensive take on any topic. Jeremy interviewed Glenn about Snowden and the current administration's ties to Russia within the 2016 campaign.
The way that the kind of Russia hype has been built up by many news organizations and prominent Democratic pundits and Democratic politicians. But it seems as though, taking that in combination with Comey, that this could well result in the fact that someone like a Carter Page or a Paul Manafort or a General Flynn, that they may actually be under investigation, that they may have done something that's either criminal or, wildly against protocols in the United States. And it may not end up with any direct connection to Trump and Putin or the kind of narrative that's been offered and seems to be kind of the dominant one now on Capitol Hill among the Democrats. To me, it seems like they're setting themselves up by really amping this up and putting every allegation on steroids. When the facts actually come out, it's going to be incredibly underwhelming, and it's going to undercut their own credibility unless they just keep doubling down on it.
It actually reminds me of what the Republicans did with Benghazi, where there was like a kernel of valid questions that needed systematic investigation and answers, which we never really actually quite got, about why they came out so quickly and made claims that were in their interest that turned out to be false about what motivated those killings. But the Republicans so wildly overplayed their hand and turned it into this unprecedented scandal and went in so many wild different directions that all their flailing and accusations that were without evidence and way premature and just overzealous in terms of what they thought this was going to accomplish completely destroyed the credibility of what were actually some valid and legitimate questions. Of course, there's valid and legitimate questions when your ambassador is killed and then the government makes false claims, wittingly or not, about what happened. In this case, it's actually even more serious because there was a hack of the DNC and of Hillary Clinton's campaign chief that did have the potential to affect the outcome of the election. We'll never know what effect it did have or if it had any effect, but it's possible it did. And it's very possible that the Russians were behind it, although we still haven't seen any evidence for it. That, of course, ought to be seriously investigated. And then the same with the question of whether the Trump campaign, any member of it, colluded with them. And I do think that there are some really sleazy, slimy people in Trump world, like Carter Page and Paul Manafort and lots of others like that, who may end up having their illegalities uncovered that are tangential to these core questions as a result of the investigation that has now been triggered. But as we said earlier, there seems to be no evidence that there's evidence of collusion. James Clapper has said that. Mike Morrell, Hillary Clinton's CIA surrogate, has said that. But the investigation should play out. The problem is that Democrats are so insane with the conspiracy theories that they embrace with no evidence.
There's been this recurring line about Edward Snowden that he spent 11 days in Hong Kong before actually meeting with you and Laura Poitras. And it's been repeated by many news organizations and some prominent opponents of Snowden as evidence that he was meeting potentially with Chinese and Russian spies to work out his deal with them. And then he met you and Laura and you and McCaskill, and then he went to Moscow. Talk about what you found and what this is all about.
Yeah, and I've had to watch for 3 years while mainstream news outlets make a claim that I knew to be an absolute lie, which is that Snowden wasn't in this hotel until June 1st, not May 21st as he claimed. And then they said, well, there's 11 missing days that's unaccounted for, which they used to imply something sinister had happened. And all along, I knew it was a lie. And it's so frustrating to watch when you have personal knowledge, mainstream journalistic outlets reporting something in authoritative tones that you know is totally false. And so we tried to get the documents for a while that showed that this was a lie. It was difficult to get them from the Mira Hotel. We didn't really think it was worth it until this new book came out 2 months ago from this Wall Street Journal writer, Edward J. Epstein, who based almost his whole book, at least in large part, on this lie. It got mainstreamed everywhere. And so we finally got the records, which we published today, showing that he, in fact, checked into the hotel exactly when he said on May 21st. There were no 11 missing days. He was in the Mirror the entire time waiting for myself and Laura and ultimately you and McCaskill to get there. And the whole thing was just a complete fabrication, a total fraud that got laundered and whitewashed and repeated over and over by extremely reckless journalists who, even now that the documents are published, still haven't corrected or retracted anything that they've said. And so now that's the next step. But it just shows how often false claims get reported by even the most authoritative mainstream news outlets.
I don't agree with every view Glenn and Jeremy share, but I don't disagree either. They provide a lot to think about and perspective that is rarely shared. The interview portion illustrates the methods their journalists use to uncover details about government programs. On episode 5, The Undisciplined Authoritarian, Jeremy interviewed Sam Biddle, an American technology journalist. He is a reporter for The Intercept and was formerly a senior writer at Gawker. Sam is the author of How Peter Thiel's Palantir Helped the NSA Spy on the Whole World. Palantir is a software tool that governments can use to analyze mass-collected data. I'm going to play a clip of that conversation, and if you're concerned about your privacy or want to avoid a sleepless night tonight, you might want to hit the skip button.
This isn't software that's used to procure data, but let's say the FBI has subpoenaed an email provider and they get, a bulk dump of text. And then they also have phone call records, and then they also have GPS data from someone's phone. This stuff is hard to visualize together because there's, one's a spreadsheet, one's text, etc. But with Palantir, you can basically put it all in one map. One of the problems with XKeyscore is that it's sort of too good at vacuuming up the world's metadata and communications records. I mean, they deal with tens of billions of individual records, which no human can comprehend, and even machines would struggle to comprehend. Palantir's role has been to say, okay, look, you feed the raw data from XKeyscore into an application we've created, and it will then be made relatively intelligible to your analysts. And one thing that you could normally take solace in is, look, I'm a needle in a global haystack. Even if they tried to find me, it would be hard because I'm buried in alongside everyone else. But that's exactly what Palantir is trying to correct. is say, look, like there's no more haystack. It's all needles.
On episode 8, Snowden versus Trump, Jeremy was live at South by Southwest 2017 and interviewed Edward Snowden. After leaking the NSA documents, Edward Snowden fled to multiple countries, but his passport was canceled while he was in Russia, forcing him to stay there. Here's a clip from that episode about Snowden's new life on the run and his almost zen outlook about it.
Talk about your assessment, or give your assessment of the relationship between Russia and the United States, Trump and Russia, and the way that all of this is being covered in the news media.
I'll talk about this generally in the context of my case, right?
Are you an FSB agent?
Crazy allegations. I'm sorry?
Are you an FSB agent?
No, I'm not. But, maybe that's a retirement plan. No, seriously, though, that's exactly the problem, is we've got these people who make allegations, right, about things that actually are relevant, things that actually should be investigated, but they're not interested in the actual phase of investigation. I don't want people to trust me. I want you to doubt me, right? I'm a former NSA guy, former CIA guy. I ended up in Russia through no fault of my own, right? I was actually trying to transit to Latin America. And the U.S. government revoked my passport to trap me in Russia, which is a fairly amazing thing that people don't really understand that well. And yeah, there were all these allegations some years ago where they went, look, this just doesn't look right? So maybe we can paint him with the Russian spy brush, because that's something that doesn't go away. We've been seeing movies about Russian spies for since since we were making movies. And there are Russian spies, right? That's the thing. You don't just brush this off as nothing. What you do is you look into it. What you do is you investigate it, right? And Congress did this to me. The intelligence community did this to me. The CIA, the NSA, all these guys, right? They saw me as public enemy number one because I showed evidence that they were breaking the law. The federal courts ruled they were breaking the law, right? This isn't an allegation. This is fact. They violated the rights of every man, woman, and child in the United States. Further than that, they violated the basic human rights of everyone in the world. The United Nations affirmed that. But so here's the thing. All that investigation went into me, right? Congress just released a report some months ago, which was criticized by every journalist who studied the issue, where the worst thing that they could show that I did, and this is with complete access to classified information, Congress being able to sit down with the director of the CIA and say, what's actually happening with this guy, is the worst thing that I ever did, was that I lied to my boss about a sick day. I said, hey, guys, I'm going to the hospital, when in reality, I was going to meet with journalists to tell them that the CIA and the NSA and all these groups were breaking the law, right? So the allegations fall apart if they're not true after investigation. And this gets back to a basic fundamental point of logic, of rationality, that is supposed to be the foundation of sort of our national character, which is that which can be presented without evidence must be dismissed without consideration, right? What we are supposed to be doing is calling for investigation, going, the allegations about Donald Trump are cause for concern. We can't take them seriously because there's no evidence backing them that we see publicly, right? But by all means, do we want the FBI to look into this? Yes, absolutely. Do we want the CIA to be investigating this? Yes, absolutely. And when we have evidence, we need to present it because that's how a system of law is supposed to work.
At the end of each episode, Jeremy invites an artist to share their music or verse. The music and poetry provide a commentary and passion that only artists can deliver.
Early on in the life of this podcast, we said that we were going to include the words and the music and the ideas of artists. And we've been really blessed with some amazing contributors and contributions. Part of the reason why we made that a component of this show is because people who advocate fascist policies, who run wars on immigrants and women and the poor and people of color, historically, they don't want vibrant culture or artistic expression. Because music is really what it keeps us going. It provides anthems for struggles and for change.
Featured on the 8th episode is KM, a Libyan-American hip-hop artist who has had to keep a low profile over the past few years due to multiple FBI visits and detentions despite no charge or convicted crimes.
Before we leave you, KM, share a few verses with us.
Sure. I would say a lot of people that are familiar with my music know about the more political or conscious content, and a lot of subject matter is heavy. So I just want to do something a little bit lighter and fun. We can do that?
You have the right, man.
All right.
Well, you're going to need to check it with South by Southwest. They're going to need to see all of your papers, and they're going to need to approve the lyrics.
I don't want to get deported back to Kentucky, man. All right. I'm better than a veteran, said I'm raising the stakes. I ain't settling for let 'em, instead I'm gonna be great. I ain't never been with better friends, heading to see my fate. I got Excedrin and amphetamines, bet I'm staying away. So I sever all endeavors, told me whether I kill. Got celebrity skill, but I can never be real, living in Beverly Hills. So I fly away and let my feathers settle tight right wherever I feel. I'm West Coast born, dirty South raised, East Coast flow with a Midwest glaze. These flow show that the kid just blaze. He's so cold that the bigs must praise. Why KM don't go out? Oh, he's so cheap. No, he low key, he only go see all the people that he used to know before he started spitting cold like when the snow below 3. The artist in me wanna go harder to a farther degree. Like the Carters and the Martyrs, you see, you started to be one that will hardly agree, but arguably another rapper smarter than me. So I do what I do, and it's true that it's priceless. You and your crew need to do something like this. Who would've knew that this dude was the nicest? Grew from a fool to a tool for the righteous. Might just break it down. I'm ahead of the competitors, I take the crown. I'm incredible, you edible, don't make a sound. I'm a predator, you edible, don't hate me now. Grew up listening to Pac, won't kid you that, but I love New York like Midget Max, so I'm sorta like Nas trying to bridge the gap. Built my team with the Bridgeview cats. Best on the scene and I'm liking it. We the best that you've seen and I'm fighting it. If you mess with my team, then you might get lit. I go to jail for my dogs like Michael Vick.
Season 2 started in May of 2017. The new season includes an interview with Glenn Greenwald about the firing of director James Comey and a frank conversation with Jill Stein about her role in the election. That photo of her with Vladimir Putin and Michael Flynn, and why mainstream media loves to hate her.
Like the U.S. government is allowing General Michael Flynn to sit at a table with Putin and Jill Stein. Like from one end, you have, why would they put somebody with such knowledge about where bodies are buried, so to speak, next to Putin? And also, why would Flynn agree to sit at a table with Jill Stein, who has made abundantly clear that his life's work is something that she stands in opposition to on a policy level? This is an insane group of people to have collected at a table together.
Well, I think that reflects the reality that we were not, in fact, at the table together. You know, we were physically at the same table. But, you know, you got to know that there was this really incredible show that was going on that included the Russian chorus and an opera singer, and there was just nonstop entertainment. There was a lot of volume, and there was no talk across the table, and it was clearly not intended to be a discussion.
And your intent in going there was not just to go to this dinner. There was a broader context.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the dinner had absolutely no relevance
to my trip. Why were you there at the time?
I was there because RT was hosting this conference as its 10th anniversary. And also the Paris Climate Summit was happening. So I thought, well, as long as I'm going to the Paris Summit, I might as well also go see if I can talk to the Russians, because we need to talk to each other. In the words of John F. Kennedy,
that we shall never negotiate out of fear, and we shall never fear to negotiate.
I sort of came of age during the Cold War, when physicians were making a great effort to talk to Russians in order to achieve nuclear weapons treaties, and we were successful. And that was deeply ingrained in me during my training, that it's really important to talk to people and that nuclear weapons are a consummate health issue. All the other health stuff doesn't matter, you know, if the nuclear weapons are going to go off.
I appreciate Jill's persistence in the face of challenges from all sides, and she continues to fight for what she feels is right, just, and fair. I also like this interview because I was expecting harsh challenges from Jeremy too. Instead, he asked tough but fair questions, not just bashing on her. In June of 2017, NSA documents were leaked to the Intercept and posted on the site. The following day, Reality Winner, contractor with the NSA, was arrested and charged with the leak, and Intercept came under scrutiny for their part in her arrest. On the episode The Trump Mixtape, Jeremy addresses this issue.
Last week, the Intercept published a leaked top-secret intelligence assessment from the National Security Agency, and that assessment outlined alleged Russian cyber attack efforts late last year on companies that make software used in U.S. elections. That document was provided to the Intercept completely anonymously. Within moments of the Intercept publishing this story, the U.S. Justice Department announced that they had arrested a 25-year-old government contractor named Reality Lee Winner for transmitting defense information under the Espionage Act. Almost instantly, the government moved to unseal all of the FBI affidavits and other government assertions in this case. It was clearly aimed at pushing a narrative. It was aimed at convicting the alleged source in the court of public opinion before she even appeared in court, and it was aimed at ramming through the Justice Department's allegations as fact. The government has continued to selectively release allegations against the alleged source, including alleged quotes from her journal and the contents of her conversations in jail that she has allegedly had with her family. She is currently being held without bond as the government attempts to destroy her in the media. This is absolutely horrid. Because her fate is in the crosshairs of the Justice Department, the Intercept as an institution needs to proceed extremely carefully so as not to impact that case, a case in which the alleged leaker has entered a plea of not guilty. The Intercept is conducting an internal investigation into the publication of this article on June 5th. And that investigation is going to include a thorough review of all of the claims that are publicly being made about this episode, including the claims that are made in the Justice Department's documents about this case. For that reason, and to ensure that nothing could possibly be used by the government in its prosecution of the alleged source of this, the Intercept itself has been institutionally constrained from stating much of anything publicly about the accusations made by the Trump Justice Department and the FBI.
The Intercept is funded by First Look Media, a nonprofit funded by philanthropist Pierre Omidyar with the billions he made from the IPO of eBay. Intercepted is the podcast you want to listen to if you're looking for journalism that isn't owned by corporations or advertisers, and provides not only a variety of voices from the panelists to the guests, but also entertainment with musical guests and poets, leaving the listener with more to consider. You can find more at theintercept.com/podcasts, and the links will be in the show notes. This is the second episode in my series on news and politics podcasts. Next episode, we'll be asking a lot of questions about what is possible or legal and getting some answers. Also, I'm happy to say that this podcast is supported by Audible. You can go to audibletrial.com/podcast playlist and receive a free audiobook. It's yours to keep, and 30 days access to their other features like daily deals and more. Jeremy Scahill has 3 audiobooks on Audible, his most recent being The Assassination Complex, and here's a sample.
If harmfulness and authorization make no difference, what explains the distinction between the permissible and the impermissible disclosure? The answer is control. A leak is acceptable if it's not seen as a threat, as a challenge to the prerogatives of the institution. But if all of the disparate components of the institution, not just its head, but its hands and feet, every part of its body, must be assumed to have the same power to discuss matters of concern, that is an existential threat to the modern political monopoly of information control.
Please visit audibletrial.com/podcast playlist to get this or any audiobook for free, and you can keep that book forever. And you also get access to their service for 30 days. That's audibletrial.com/podcast playlist. This episode was recorded in, yes, it's very rainy, Portland, Oregon. Writing and narration by me, Brendan Hutchins. The producer and script editor was Sarah Hutchins, and moral support and infinite distractions were provided by Sebastian and Autumn, Sarah and my cats. There are a couple ways to support the show. To keep the recommendations coming, please visit podcastplayl.ist/support. There you can find my Patreon page and other affiliate links to support the show. For more podcast recommendations and to rate and review podcasts yourself, head to podchaser.com, a new site devoted to podcast discovery. A cross between IMDb to track hosts and guests, and what Letterboxd is for movies and Goodreads is for books, Podchaser is a social home for rating and reviewing podcasts and episodes. You can use my beta key, Podplay, PODPLAY, for access to Podchaser during the beta, and a link will be in the show notes. Hey, this is a podcast. This podcast is hosted on the incredible Podient.co podcasting platform that has a free unlimited tier and upgrades for services and features. If you're looking to host your own podcast, check it out and send me a link. I'd love to hear your show.